In 1997, Donnie Brasco made nearly $125 million at the box office, telling the story of an FBI agent who infiltrated the Bonanno crime family. But the real operation lasted nearly 6 years, went far deeper than the movie shows, and did the kind of damage to the Bonanno family that they were still trying to recover from decades later. The real Donnie Brasco was Joseph Pistone, a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. No FBI agent had ever worked undercover inside one of the 5 families before. And the operation Pistone was running out of New York and Miami, codenamed Sun Apple, was originally supposed to last about 6 months. It did not last 6 months. It lasted nearly 6 years. Pistone walked out of the FBI's New York field office in September of 1976 and did not come back until the summer of 1981. During that time, the Bureau erased his name from office rolls and his personnel file. Co-workers, friends, informants, none of them knew where he had gone. Even the agents who approved the operation had no idea it would last this long or produce this much. Pistone did not walk straight into the Bonanno family. He started on the edges, working his way into truck hijacking rings connected to the Colombo family through a crew run by a man named Gilly Greca. He hung around social clubs. He studied the jewelry trade for 2 full weeks just to sell his cover story. He funneled FBI money into mob hands so he would look like a good earner. Slowly, through patience and nerve, he got close to a made man named Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero. Lefty and Donnie had a real relationship. Ruggiero took Pistone under his wing, made him an associate of the Bonanno family in early 1977, and genuinely believed in him. Ruggiero would talk openly about Mafia business around Pistone, something a made man would never normally do with a non-member. He was inadvertently handing the FBI the inner workings of the family on a daily basis. He followed a simple Mafia pay structure. He kept half of what Pistone earned, then split his take with his capo Mike Sabella, who passed a cut up to the Bonanno bosses. So the FBI was literally paying into the Bonanno family's hierarchy every week, funding its own investigation by feeding cash up the chain of command. Think about that for a second. The United States government was on the Bonanno family payroll, and the Bonannos had no idea they were paying for their own destruction. But the operation did not stay in Lefty's orbit, and it did not stay inside the Bonanno family either. By 1978, New York City was close to declaring bankruptcy. Times were hard, even for the mob. Pistone convinced Ruggiero to form a business arrangement with Frank Balistreri, the boss of the Milwaukee crime family. The FBI already had another agent undercover inside the Milwaukee organization using the name Tony Conte. Pistone vouched for Conte to Ruggiero, and together they built a bridge between the Bonanno and Milwaukee families. So the Bureau was running 2 parallel infiltrations at the same time, using the Bonanno family as the connective tissue between the two. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. As Pistone rose through the family, he moved from Ruggiero's circle into the crew of Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano, a far more powerful figure inside the Bonannos. Napolitano was ambitious, aggressive, and rising fast. He and Pistone ran a club together in Florida called the King's Court Bottle Club, a front where gangsters could gamble, fence stolen goods, and deal narcotics. The FBI had set Pistone up with homes in both New York and Florida to maintain the cover. And while all of this was happening, the Bonanno family was tearing itself apart from the inside. In July of 1979, the head of the family, Carmine Galante, was shot dead at a restaurant in Bushwick, Brooklyn, his trademark cigar still between his teeth. Without a clear leader, the Bonanno family nearly collapsed into anarchy. A power war broke out between rival factions. 3 rebel capos were stockpiling automatic weapons and planning to kill the Loyalists. In May of 1981, the Loyalists struck first. Joseph Massino arranged a meeting at a Brooklyn social club where gunmen, including Vito Rizzuto from Montreal, were hiding in a closet. When the 3 rival capos walked in, they were ambushed and killed. Pay attention to this next detail, because it explains a lot about what came later. When Napolitano wanted Pistone involved in that hit, Massino vetoed it. He was suspicious of Brasco. He told his crew to stay away from him. Massino's instinct was right. Nobody else in the family was listening, and right in the middle of that chaos, Pistone was still there, still collecting intelligence, still recording names, operations, hierarchies, and relationships. Through casual conversations with Bonanno members, he picked up information about a network of Sicilian-born mafiosi known derisively inside the family as the Zips for their rapid-fire Sicilian dialect, who were using pizza parlors across New York as fronts for heroin distribution. These men were not just a faction of the Bonannos. They were the Sicilian Mafia operating on American soil, a family within a family, clannish and secretive. That intelligence helped set in motion what became the Pizza Connection case, the longest criminal jury trial in American history at the time, lasting 17 months and ending with 18 convictions. The network had moved an estimated $1.65 billion worth of heroin from Southwest Asia into the United States through labs in Sicily and storefronts in Brooklyn. When that trial went to court, Pistone took the witness stand and explained the command structure of the American Mafia, establishing that bosses were criminally liable for the actions of their underlings. His testimony even reached the maxi trial of nearly 500 Sicilian Mafia defendants in Palermo. One undercover operation produced multiple prosecutions across multiple years on 2 continents. The clock was already ticking on Pistone's cover. He just couldn't hear it yet. By 1981, Napolitano had consolidated enough power that he wanted Pistone formally inducted into the family. A federal agent still reporting to the FBI was being prepared for a ceremony that would have made him a made member of the Bonanno crime family. If the FBI had not pulled the plug, the United States government would have had a sworn soldier inside one of the 5 families of New York. In my opinion, that single fact tells you more about how vulnerable the Bonannos really were than anything in the movie. Pistone did not just fool a few mobsters. He exposed a family that could not protect itself from its own trust. The FBI pulled the plug before it could happen. They decided the risk was too high, especially after Napolitano ordered Pistone to carry out a murder as proof he deserved his button. The FBI tried to stage the hit by planning to kidnap the target and claim the man was dead, but they could not locate him. At that point, the operation was shut down. On July 26, 1981, the men around Donnie Brasco learned the truth. Pistone had spent 6 years seeing his wife Maggie and their 3 daughters roughly once every 3 or 4 months. He could not wear a wire because he was with these men daily and nightly, and there was no safe way to conceal one. He had participated in loan sharking, extortion, and illegal gambling to maintain his cover. He had been ordered to commit 4 separate murders and had to find ways to avoid carrying them out without blowing his identity. The FBI had moved his family out of state for their protection, and now it was over. On August 2nd, 1982, Pistone gave his first public testimony. Over the next several years, his testimony in racketeering cases across New York produced over 200 federal indictments and more than 100 convictions of Mafia members. The Bonanno family lost its seat on the commission, the governing body of the American Mafia, where the bosses of the 5 families that sat together and settled disputes, approved hits, and divided territory. Years later, Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, the former underboss of the Gambino family, who turned government informant, confirmed that it was specifically the embarrassment from the Donnie Brasco case that drove the other bosses to expel the Bonannos. And no, that is not an exaggeration. The other families voted them out because they could not be trusted to police their own ranks. The movie never mentions it. In my opinion, the real Donnie Brasco operation was one of the most humiliating security breaches in modern mafia history, and the commission expulsion is the proof. Dominic Napolitano knew what was coming for him. True to his old school mentality, he made no attempt to run. On August 17, 1981, he stopped by a bar to have a final drink with a bartender friend. He gave the bartender his jewelry and the keys to his apartment so that someone would take care of his pet pigeons. Then he walked into a basement in the home of a Bonanno associate named Ronald Filicomo, where Frank Curly Lino and others were waiting. Napolitano was thrown down the stairs and shot dead. His hands were cut off. Roughly a year later, heavy rains unearthed a shallow grave, and his body was found in a creek on Staten Island, Dorsigna. Joseph Massino later said, according to trial testimony from his brother-in-law, Salvatore Vitale, that he had to give Napolitano a receipt for the Donnie Brasco situation. In 2004, Massino himself was found guilty of ordering that murder. Napolitano's girlfriend later contacted Pistone and told him that Sonny Black had no ill feelings toward him, that he always knew Pistone was different, that he carried himself with an air of intelligence. She said he was a good friend to Sonny and her, which, looking back, makes Napolitano's decision to vouch for Brasco either incredibly loyal or incredibly foolish, probably both. Anthony Mira, the man who had originally brought Pistone into the family, was also killed. He was shot dead in February of 1982. Ruggiero was supposed to be next, but the FBI intercepted him on the way to a meeting and arrested him for his own protection. He received 15 years under the RICO Act. Ruggiero genuinely did not see it coming. He had spent 5 years talking freely in front of a man he trusted, and every word of it had gone straight to the federal government. Pistone later said his intention had always been to put people in jail, not to get them killed. The Mafia's internal justice system did not care about his intentions. The Mafia placed a $500,000 open contract on Pistone's life. Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family, eventually called it off, reasoning that killing a federal agent would bring more heat than the Bureau had already delivered. But the contract reportedly remained open in some form for decades. Pistone still lives under an assumed name. His neighbors do not know who he is. He has relocated at least 5 or 6 times since 1981. He told an interviewer in 2021 that he still believed the contract was active. Pistone himself said the movie was about 85% accurate, which he considered pretty good by Hollywood standards. But that missing 15% is where the real weight of this story lives. The damage did not stop with the convictions. It seeped into the bones of the Bonanno family for decades. Joseph Massino, the man who had been suspicious of Brasco from the start and who had vetoed his involvement in the triple murder, eventually became boss of the Bonanno family after Philip Rastelli died in 1991. And the scars from the Brasco operation shaped everything Massino did. He closed the family's social clubs to make FBI surveillance harder. He forbade members from speaking his name. Instead, they were told to touch their ears. When referring to him, he held meetings in remote locations, sometimes in other countries, to avoid wiretaps. Remembering how close Pistone had come to actually being made, Massino imposed a new rule. Any prospective soldier had to be on record with a made man for at least 8 years before they could be inducted. 8 years. That is how deep the paranoia ran. If you watch the movie, none of this is there. In my opinion, the film makes the infiltration feel smaller than it actually was. It gives you the emotional betrayal, and it does that well. But the institutional damage, the paranoia that rewired how an entire crime family operated for decades, that part never made it to the screen. And the irony of all of this is that being kicked off the commission may have actually saved the Bonanno family. When the Mafia commission trial hit in the mid-'80s, the heads of the other 4 New York families were sent to prison. But because the Bonannos had already been expelled, their leadership was not part of that trial. Massino used that window to rebuild. By the late 1990s, the Bonannos had not only regained their commission seat, but had become the second most powerful family in New York after the Genovese family. Massino was called the last Don because he was the only official mafia boss in New York who was not in prison. But then in 2004, Massino was convicted of ordering multiple murders, including the killing of Napolitano, for the Brasco situation. Facing the death penalty and a possible 8th murder conviction, Massino did something no boss of a 5 family had ever done before. He became a government informant, wore a wire in prison, and testified against his own people. He gave up hundreds of gold bars hidden in his restaurant and $7 million in cash stashed in his attic. The man who rebuilt the Bonannos after the Brasco disaster ended up breaking the family open a second time. You could not write that ending and have anyone believe it. The infiltration that happened in the 70s was still producing consequences 30 years later. And Pistone, he retired from the FBI in 1986, but he could not stay away. In 1992, at 53 years old, he requested reinstatement. The Bureau agreed, but only if he would enter their 16-week training class at Quantico, Virginia, the same course given to new recruits. Pistone went through the entire program alongside agents in their 20s. He passed. He was rehired and served until the mandatory retirement age of 57. As of his last public interview, Pistone still lives under an assumed name. His neighbors do not know who he is. He has relocated at least 5 or 6 times. He still carries a firearm. And inside the Bonanno family, for years after Massino took over, no one was allowed to say his name. If you needed to refer to the boss, you touched your ear. If you wanted to become a made man, you waited 8 years. If you wanted to hold a meeting, you did it in another country. All of that because of one agent who walked into a social club in Little Italy, ordered a drink, and stayed for 6 years. If this is the kind of deep dive you came here for, subscribe. I cover stories like this every week. And if you want to see the true history behind Mafia movies, that video is on screen now.